I want to thank you again for coming on and like agreeing to do this. So
No, not at all. Thank you for asking. It's been awesome. It's great. The videos are so good.
oh, thank you. Why did you start Highland dancing?
So my mum, she danced when she was younger. She and her cousin went to dancing lessons in Blairgowrie. And I think it's just something that she always wanted me to try. So I went to ballet at first when I was about maybe 3.5 or 4, and I did ballet for a couple of years. And then when I was 5, she decided to put me to Highland lessons. So yeah, just a bit of a family affair, really.
Do you recall at all your first competitive memory?
I've got a few early competitive memories. I'm not really sure about if I've got the order right in my head, but I think my first ever competition was Ceres Highland Games in Fife, and I have like little sort of flashes of the day. Like I can remember what the arena was like, but I don't really remember too much about the competition. I think the earliest one I think is probably from Burnt Island Highland Games. And the reason I remember it is because it was chucking it down. It was such torrential rain. And I've got a photograph from that day, and I'm in my little plastic raincoat. And the reason I remember it though is because I went up and I don't know where my brain was, but I started the fling on the left foot and did the whole dance backwards. So that one sticks in my mind. And I remember funny little things like that. I remember an early Kenmore Highland Games when I was in the primary, and watching. Elevation wasn't really my kind of natural strength when I was younger. And I remember watching a girl, I think in maybe the age group above me in the primary, and she was doing her paddy baz, and she was so strong and so bouncy. And I thought, oh, I really would quite like to do it like that. So when I went up for my my paddy baz and high cuts, I thought the way I would do that would be I would just lift my feet really, really high, when I was putting them into third or when I was doing my beat. And you can imagine how well that went down. So it's funny little memories I have like that of my kind of early experience in the primary. The day that we forgot my kilt, that one sticks out pretty well. I feel like that was maybe like a Motherwell town hall kind of setting, and getting there and suddenly realizing we had everything but the kilt. So having to borrow, like, I think it was like a tartan traveling rug from someone to put on because we didn't have anything else. So yeah, it's I don't know, maybe a little bit of like childhood trauma from those memories that made them stick in my brain. But those are my sort of earliest competitive memories. I think thankfully I got a little bit better as I got older.
So throughout your dancing career, I know that you were a big inspiration to dancers when you danced, but you're also a big inspiration to dancers nowadays. And I was just wondering, who was that person for you?
From a dancing point of view, I think that the person, I had a couple. I think when I was when I was starting out, I always sort of aspired to be like Alison McGregor. Alison learned from Leslie Bowman as well, and I used to always look for Alison's name on trophies. I think she won pretty much everything there was to win. So it was always a wanted to be as good as Alison and to do as well as she had done. And then as I got a little bit older, the person that I used to sort of hold up in my head as the image of the ideal performance was Jacqueline Smith from Ontario. I remember seeing her dancing at Cowell when I was little, and then when I was maybe about 9, when we went to Canada for the first time, and seeing her compete over there, and just thinking that she was just sort of everything that a dancer should be. She was strong and she was powerful, but it was always graceful and elegant, and it just looked effortless. And she just had this sort of presence on the stage, and this sort of calm, elegant presentation that I just thought was fabulous. So, she was always who I would hold up in my, that was the image I would have in my head of, what I wanted to be like. But I think there's a lot of other people, as I've gotten older and, you're involved in sort of different aspects of Highland dancing that, I would say I hold up as inspiring, or people that I admire. I think a huge one for me is my mum, and not just in a dancing sense, but I think my mum, when I was 9, my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I think watching her sort of the way she fought through that and handled that, you know, when I was that age, was just, it's something that you maybe don't quite understand at the time. But you know, when you think back on that time and I go, you know, she was still, you know, she was back working as soon as she could. She was taking us to dancing competitions still, you know, it was in the July, and she was right there in August at every championship. And, you know, just on, you know, a sort of as a person, you know, that's hugely inspiring. But I think, you know, when I was younger, I used to try and take, you know, lessons I learned from watching my mum handle, you know, situations like that, you know, and you know, that's what I used as my kind of inspiration just in life, you know, and that transfers into, you know, what you do as a dancer or as a competitor. That's her phoning me. Right in the middle of an interview. She must know. Yeah, definitely, you know, and I think as I got older as well, you know, I would always, you know, you look up to, you know, the adults that have, you know, influenced you in your life, you know, and Shendel was a great inspiration to me. I learned from Shendel for the sort of latter years of my dancing career, and just always really admired, you know, the way she taught, the way she sort of empathized with the dancers. She just had this lovely way of really getting the best out of everybody, you know, and it was always really sort of positive reinforcement, and she was all about allowing people to sort of find themselves a little bit, and you know, be the best, you know, bringing out the best in them and allowing them to be the best they could be, you know. And obviously she did that for me, and I saw her do that with lots of other dancers as well, you know. And just again, you know, like my mum, she was, you know, she worked, she taught, she was involved in committees and boards and lectured and taught all over the world. And I just thought, you know, these kind of strong women, you know, had a massive influence on me, and they were, you know, really inspirational, not just in dancing but in all aspects of my life. I think there's still, you know, we're really lucky in Highland dancing, and that you don't need to look too far in our community to find people that are inspiring. You know, I still look at people who are competing now, you know, they've overcome, you know, severe injuries and come back to be successful competitors. You know, they're still competing in their kind of late 20s and getting better and better all the time. And, you know, that's really inspiring. You know, people like, I look at my friend Douglas, you know, Douglas McFarland, and see the work that he's doing. Don't really call him Douglas very often. I gave him his official Sunday name. But seeing what Dougie's doing, you know, he's always just been so passionate, you know, about dancing, and passionate about making accessible to, you know, to young boys, to young men, you know, and that's inspiring. You know, yeah, we're really lucky. I think that the community that we have, there are people teaching and working in committees and choreographing all over the world that are doing, you know, massively inspirational things, you know, and I kind of, you soak all of that up and take it on, and yeah, it's just, yeah, we're lucky.
So winning the World Championships is an amazing achievement, and I just wondered, do you remember the date, and if so, would you be able to talk us through it?
It was a little while ago. I kind of remember little bits of the day, in different ways. You know, it's a funny one when I think back on, you know, the sort of significant moments like that. There's certain little bits that really stand out, and then others that are just a bit of a blur. And that day, it's funny, I remember the morning in our chalet. We always stayed in the chalets at Hunter's Quay. And I remember being in the room and doing my makeup, which at that time was nothing like the way, you know, dancers would do our makeup now. It was, you know, it was get the blue eyeshadow and the pink blusher, and and eyebrows weren't a thing. Okay, so I won the world with no eyebrows, which which really upsets me when I look at the pictures now. But I remember getting ready, and I remember my mum doing my hair. She's still at 16. My mum still did my hair because our dancing school that I was at the time, we wore French braids, and I could not do it. So she did my hair for me, but I used to have a fringe still as well, and she was so nervous. I remember saying at the time, she's like, my hands are just not doing it. I'm too nervous. And I don't remember feeling as nervous that morning, but she was so nervous that she took too much of my fringe back into the braid. So when I look at the pictures now, I have the worst fringe in the world. It's like pinnacle of your competitive career, worst hair of your life. So that's always been a bit of a kind of sore point for us, that we really didn't quite nail the hair and makeup look that day. But who knew that it was going to be that important? So I don't really remember the warm up or anything like that. I remember bits of bits of the competition, but I think it's I have moments of the waiting for the results. I remember sitting on mum's knee, and I remember us holding hands and just waiting. At that point, I think they didn't call everybody backstage and into the tent. They sort of did a couple of results from the juveniles, then a couple of results from the juniors, and then a couple from the adults. So you had to wait between your dances. I remember sitting at waiting at the real result, and I'd had 2 firsts and a second, but what it's like at these competitions at that level. It's anything can happen. It's so close. The results are always so tight, and still sitting there barely able to breathe, thinking, oh my goodness. It's you're within touching distance, but equally you could still end up miles away. So and I remember the real result coming out, my number being first, and just crying, and running up for the medals. And I remember the girls in the group, and it was my friend Kate DeGood and Christine Henderson was there, and I remember they'd waited for me, and we were just hugging, and I was crying and making my makeup even worse. And it was just, I think my overwhelming feeling was probably a bit of relief, because I think it's something that we I don't know, sometimes I think we have this thing where it's almost not okay to say that I want to win, but when you're competing at that level, and over the years in the Scottish Championships, I think since I was 8, I'd been either first or second in the Scottish Open. At 14 and 15, I'd been top 3 in the world. So it's something that you had aspired to for so long, and really work towards, and you want it. It's a dream for every dancer, and when you've come close to it, then of course it's always in your mind that that's the goal, that's what I really want, but it's so hard to actually get there, and there's always that thought in your mind of, well, maybe that won't happen, maybe I'll have a really good competitive career, but maybe there are no guarantees. So I think it was almost that feeling of, thank goodness, I did it, I was able to do it, and then it was just joy, just absolute joy. We had a moment when we got together to do the parade around the park, where we'd lost the trophy. People were drinking out of it, and I'd been chatting, because obviously like a chat, and suddenly Billy Forsyth shouting everybody into the parade, and I got there, I have absolutely no idea who's got my trophy, and I remember I can't remember whether it was Billy or Ronnie saying to me, where's your cup? I was like, I don't know. Somebody's drinking from it. And so of course everybody, mum and Leslie, had obviously gone scrambling to try and find it, and next thing it gets handed through the crowd in the enclosure into the parade, and there's a video of it. Just think, oh, what a way to be presenting yourself at the front of that parade. But it was just a really, really happy day. I just remember people being so kind and so lovely, and just lots of hugs, lots of tears, and just real happiness. It was really special.
What do you miss most about competing?
I think I miss the time with friends, actually. I miss seeing your friends week in and week out. I miss the chatting in the line. Obviously I was 100% focused 100% of the time, but it's those moments that you'll know this as well, when you're sort of standing waiting to go on, particularly it used to be when we get to the nationals, in the afternoon, once you've done the championship and you're kind of, everybody's a bit more relaxed, that those moments were really fun. When we'd get to the end of the reel, and you finally went, I can breathe again, it's done, relax, and you then do a bit of sort of socializing. You know, that I do miss. And I think feeling, you know, being part of a team, you know, at something where even though you're competing individually, you know, when you're at competitions, you sit with your dancing school, you know, you'll travel together, you know, and you've got that real sense of a kind of a dancing family around you. And that, you know, that's something that's really quite special, and not a lot of people get to experience. So that's definitely something that I miss. And I'm just lucky now, I guess, that I can sort of replicate something like that with what we do now with the dance group, and that I still get to see them. And I'm also quite lucky that quite a lot of the people I competed with are now judges, so you get to see them every now and then when you're judging together. So it's good.
When you were competing, I just wondered, is there any injuries or obstacles that you had to face, that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I was really lucky when I was younger that I didn't really have anything major. I think maybe when I was 15, had a little bit of a you know, had a sore foot for a little while that a later X-ray told me had actually been a stress fracture. But you know, it was one of those where you just went, ice it and it's fine. But you know, it was relatively minor. And yeah, I was lucky for most of my career until I was 18. And the week after Worlds, when I was 18, I broke my foot at Braemar. And that was pretty devastating. So I'd had a really good sort of first year in the adults. I'd ended up being third at Worlds, and was, you know, feeling like I was sort of getting to a good place with my dancing. And then I snapped my fifth metatarsal in the first dance at Braemar in the hornpipe doing the low cutting step. So it took a long time before I danced that step again. But that was sort of the start of a few tricky years for me. It took a while, I think, coming back from that first broken foot. It took a lot longer than I expected. I think I probably rushed it a little bit, tried to come back too early. And at that time, you know, I think in general, as a sort of Highland dancing community, we didn't maybe have as much sort of awareness or understanding of things like cross training, you know, and how important that was. You know, we had some, but certainly me, I didn't have much experience of it. And, you know, just sort of tried to come back and dance the way I had before. And well, that doesn't really work when you've been out for a year. So, it was a bit of a struggle. So I'd ended up, I think, came back about 18 months later. And I danced the full year, but I danced with, you know, my foot was still injured. I had terrible shin splints, and it was, you know, I had a relatively successful year, but I was struggling physically with it, and it kind of stopped being enjoyable for me at that point because it was just painful. You know, I think when you're sat at a championship with your foot in, you know, in a bag of ice, and, you know, icing your shins after every dance, you know, I mean, you know what it's like. If something's not right, it just stops being enjoyable because it's always on your mind. You feel like you can't train properly, and then, you know, you try to kind of compensate and protect the bit that's sore, and then something else is sore, and it just becomes, you know, this sort of vicious circle. So, you know, I kind of battled through that year, but was really struggling by August. I actually remember I think it was 2006, and I remember dancing the high cuts and the reel at the Commonwealth, and actually had really wanted to just kind of retire from that championship, but pushed through, and by the reel was almost in tears dancing the high cuts. And I think in your head as well, it's not just the fact that you're in pain, it's going, people can see me doing this, and this doesn't feel good, so I'm sure it doesn't look good. So, you know, it wasn't fun anymore. And yeah, that Cowell year was the first year that I had never been called back for you know, prizes. And obviously, you know, in the adults you just do the qualifiers, and I was called back for the final and danced in the finals, but didn't get a call back for a medal. And that was you know, and rightly so, because I could barely hop. But, you know, that's a difficult thing to sort of to take, you know, when the first time that happens. It's, I think, because for me I think I felt embarrassed as well, you know, as well as being disappointed and feeling like I hadn't given a good account of myself. I think, you think, well, you know, I look at how I used to compete and what I used to be able to perform like, and where I am now, you know, that was a really hard sort of August for me. So I as it happened, I was actually going to France to study as part of my university course. So I sort of had an enforced year away, which was sort of needed for the injuries. And just in case it hadn't been tricky enough, I broke my foot again while I was away. So, you know, as you do, demonstrating dancing to my exchange students and French student friends, and of course could have demonstrated a fling, but they wanted to see something cool. So I thought, well, I'll show them leap and high cut. Which I know my mum made that face as well. when you've not really done anything for quite a while, and the last time you danced you could barely hop, sure, show them leap and high cut. So that was a good phone call to mum. So of course I came back home, back in a moon boot, back in a cast, and out for another year. So during that year, I actually I made the decision to leave my old dance school and kind of stepped away from it a little bit. So at that point, I had a little bit of a kind of crisis of confidence, and it took me a while to decide whether I was ever going to dance again. Partly from the injury and making that decision, and I had a little moment where I thought maybe that's me done. But I have very good people around me in my family and in Shendal, who encouraged me to get back and give my judges exam a go, and getting back into it in that way. We had a chat, and I thought, well, maybe I would quite like to do it again, but I don't want to do it in pain. So we're going to take it really slow. And Shendal and mum, they built me back up. For the first few months, I just danced in trainers, and we worked on absolute basics. Went right back to looking at the way I hopped. Natural turnout wasn't something that I was blessed with. So we went back to, right, well, let's look at the alignment of your body and how you hop. Let's do some plyometrics. Let's absolutely retrain your legs in the basics. And we worked hard, and built back up. And in 2008 went back to having a go at championships and got a medal at Cowell, and thought, well, that was actually more enjoyable than I thought it might be. So we got stuck in. That was the reason I ended up doing another few years. So overcoming injuries like that is really difficult and really challenging. And I think doing it in the latter stages of your career is really hard as well, because body doesn't just quite snap back in the way it does when you're in your teens. And that only gets worse, FYI. It only gets harder. No, it doesn't quite come back as easily as you would like. And in your head, you can still spring about the way you did when you were 13, and 15 and 17, and at 24 your body's going no. So there's a lot of, I kind of had to reset my brain a little bit as well, and sort of adjust how I approached it and adjust my goals. And I'd finished university, I was then working, and I had aspirations in my sort of what I wanted to do in my professional life as well. So I had to kind of strike a balance and almost accept that, well, do you know what, the goals that you had when you were 15, 16, 17, of going, right, well, I'm in here and I'm competing to win, and I want to be a world champion, and that needs to change. But what was more important for me was that, one, I was not in pain, but I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to feel all the things that I used to feel when I was in classes and at competitions like Open, and I wanted to feel that kind of joy in my dancing. That's something that Shendal helped to kind of bring back to me by letting me just be. It was, what do you think that you want to achieve this week? And it's, right, well, I want to be a little bit fitter and not crying at the end of a 6-step chanteuse. So let's work on that. Do it was all about sort of just readjusting your expectations and not being quite so hard on myself, and just enjoying dancing. And it was great. We had great classes in the summer, but I got to dance with my friends from overseas again, and I enjoyed it much more just by letting myself just relax and just dance. And I was lucky enough to still place in the, you know, top 6 at Cowell, you know, twice. And I was able to come away from it going, you know what, I really enjoyed that, and I didn't put unnecessary pressure on myself.
It's very inspirational to hear that like you went through such a bad injury and being able to come back and still be very successful at what you were doing, and then also doing your university course at the same time.
It is difficult, and you know, if it is a balance. You know, I was at university, or I was living in Glasgow initially when I started going to Shendal for lessons, but my graduate job was in Edinburgh. You know, so I was traveling back and forth, and I was really fortunate actually that Elizabeth and Miss Patterson allowed me to come to their class in Edinburgh during the weeks as well. So I was able to, you know, to have that experience and you know, be part of that class, as well as, you know, working with Shendal. You know, things don't always look the way you expect them to. You know, things change, you hit bumps in the road, and you know, the things that you thought were the be all and end all at one time don't always turn out to be that way. You know, and I was really fortunate to have won a world championship, you know, and that can never be, you know, that can never be taken away. Whatever your achievements are, once they're yours, you know, they're yours. So that maybe made it a little bit easier for me, in that I could go, well, you know what, I achieved you know, those huge goals that I had, and I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, you know, and that took a lot of effort and a lot of time and investment from me and the people that helped to get me there. But now, you know, it's the picture's taking, you know, with the route's taking a different turn. The picture doesn't look the way I thought it might look when I was, you know, when I was standing, you know, at third in the world at 18, thinking, well, right, okay, we've made a good start. You know, a week later you're in a cast. So, you know, and yeah, the way that panned out isn't maybe what I expected, but I think you learn and you adapt, and it changes your perspective. And it helped me realize that actually, titles are great, and we should all work really hard and all aspire to be the best that we can be. And ambition is great, and work ethic is really important. But you know, there are so many other things open to us as Highland dancers, and you know, so much of, you know, what we get to experience is about the people that we experience it with, and you know, the places we get to go to, and you know, the people that we can learn from. You know, and that became, you know, a much more important thing for me than you know, than just striving for more titles. You know, I've been really lucky in my career, and you know, it was nice to be able to finish you know, the way I did.
Can you explain how it felt moving away from your competitive career and re-entering as a judge?
I think I was probably quite lucky in that because I passed my judges test around 2008 and then did another few years as a competitor, it was a sort of smoother transition into it. So I'd already judged quite, you know, a lot of competitions before I retired and then went completely onto the full panel. But it was, you know, it's a difficult decision. I think if you've loved it and you've been a competitor all your life, it's a really hard decision to make. But I was ready. By that point, my body was broken again. I'd had to have surgery on my hip in 2012. The last year that I competed was 2011, and I didn't sort of set out saying this will be my last year, but I think, you know, I was getting to that point. By then I was, you know, I was coming out of my graduate scheme and I had a promotion. So I was on the sort of career path at work, and, you know, it was getting harder and harder to sort of train and to give it the time that it needs to be competing at the really top level. And while, you know, all of what I said before about, you know, the picture changing and enjoying the fun part of it, I didn't want to be going out there and competing, you know, at a level I wasn't really comfortable with. You know, I didn't want to give a poor account of myself, you know, and I didn't ever want people to go, well, she should have stopped 4 years ago. Maybe they still did, I don't know. But, you know, you still have that sort of pride in that you know, you want, if you're going to go and compete in championship level, you know, you want to be able to give a good account of yourself. So, you know, I think that last year, 2011, I sort of knew I was maybe coming to the end, but I knew I'd hurt myself, and I was kind of struggling with it all year. And it was one of those funny injuries that took a while to kind of figure out what it was and to get it properly diagnosed. And it was clicking, it was getting kind of locked. I was, when I sat in a car for any length of time, it was torture. So eventually, towards the very end of 2011, beginning of 2012, I managed to get a few referrals via my physios, and they diagnosed a hip a tear in the cartilage in my hip joint. So it was a difficult decision, but we kind of went round and round with it with my family, and decided that we'd have the surgery to fix it, because it was just affecting everything. So I think there was a sort of, a small hope in my brain that I was like, maybe I'll try and come back again. But by that point, realistically, I was, you're kind of past the mid-20s mark, and going really with the amount of work, what I'm doing with work, the amount of time I've got to take out, it was a sort of 6-month break. And, after the surgery, for the first 12 weeks, I wasn't allowed to do anything really. It was, I think they put like 6-week limit before I was even able to go and see the physio. So it was quite a long recovery. It had been, quite a big operation. So I eventually at the end of the year just said, no, we're not going to do this. If I can get back to dancing for, performing or what have you, then, I already danced at the Glen Eagles Hotel, and thought if I can get back to doing bits and pieces like that, then, that's fine, but this is the time. So yeah, it was still emotional. I still remember crying when the letter was read out of the board meeting saying that was me going on the full panel, and phoning my mom going, "Oh, what have I done?" She's like, "Oh, really? We're going to go around this again." So, but it was time, and I'm glad I had that last year of just doing a few championships and enjoying it. But it was time to move on, and once I got over my initial sort of emotional moment, then I knew I'd made the right decision.
Whether it be judging or dancing, and you visited some beautiful countries, I just wondered, do you have a standout memory?
I think my standout, I think I would probably go my standout place that I visited would have to be Australia. I've loved so many places, and there are a few other real highlights, but I think Australia, I went to Australia when I was 12 to compete in Champion of Champions and the Western Australian Championships and the Grand Australasian, and it was just incredible. I loved it, and I have been lucky to go back a few times. I went back again at 18 to compete. I've been back to judge, but I had a really special trip there in 2009. So it was just after I'd just had my kind of first year of sort of trialing, coming back into championships, and I'd passed my judges exam, but I was, having just graduated the summer before, I was sort of in that, having a little kind of gap year, deciding, what I wanted my career to be, what I was going to do next. And I worked and saved for a few months, and then took 4 months in Australia, and went to New Zealand as well. And it was incredible. I would say like that trip did change me. I had just come off the back of all those injuries and everything that went with that. And, it was, I stayed with Kerry Grosser and Maureen Fife and Kathy Reese and, Dougie and Caroline and Kylie and Veronica McFarland. And then I went to New Zealand, and I got to have lessons with Judy and Morgan, and with Julie Appleton Seymour, and just the kindness of all of those people, and their dance schools and the sort of communities around them was just incredible. They just, as soon as you say, "Oh, I'm coming over," great, come visit us, come stay with us, come to our classes. And it was just brilliant to be able to learn from all of those people, and join their classes. And I got to judge a couple of competitions, at different places as well. And it was just great fun. I loved it. I got to be a tourist and go and travel around, and climb the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and, take a road trip down around Melbourne area, and just, had a fantastic 3 or 4 months, with all of those people. And I think every time I've gone to Australia, that's what has really struck me, is just how warm and welcoming everybody is. Obviously it's a much smaller community, and they're much more spread out, but it's just always really welcoming. And I think been lucky to make some really, really good friends there, and they've had a really big influence on me. And at that point, they had a really big influence on my dancing as well. And I came back from that trip really energized and ready to get going again. So yeah, Australia is definitely up there as one of my most special places. And I've loved. We went to Edmonton for the Scotland Canada series in 2000, and it was on the ice rink, and that was just phenomenal as well. And I think as in sort of performing life, one of the most special places would be quite randomly actually is Milwaukee. So Milwaukee have a massive sort of Irish festival. They have a purpose-built festival site with massive stages, and they have Summerfest and Irish Fest and every kind of fest imaginable, I think. But Irish Fest in August is that's the first sort of big overseas gig that we ever did with the Chili Pipers, and I will still never forget the number of people and the reaction of the crowd at that first the first show that we did. We've been lucky to be back there with with them a couple of times, and that's a really special place as well. And again, I think it's always just anywhere that there's a real sort of sense of community around it, where people embrace you and they embrace our culture, and it's always really nice to see, and it always just makes for a really sort of special experience.
Yeah. So going back to 2014, you judged at the Highland Games, and I was just wondering, how did it feel going back as a judge opposed to a dancer?
Yeah, it's a funny one to try and describe, actually. So it was only 3 years, I think, after I'd done my last 3 years after I'd last competed there. So it's all of your kind of competitive memories are still really fresh, and it's Cowell, I always say it's a funny experience. Walking, it's hard to describe what it feels like walking in through the gates. I don't know about you, how you feel about it, but I always get a little bit, you get butterflies just as soon as you walk in. Yeah, it's like that. There's this sort of, kind of hallowed ground feeling about it. And that year, 2014, I think it was, I want to say it was 20 years, because it was 94, 20 years since I'd won my first Scottish championship. So it was a nice sort of anniversary moment. One that only I would sort of register, but yeah, it was really special, I think, to be able to come back, as a judge after all that time. But it's such a huge privilege to be on those boards as a dancer, and it's equally as big a privilege to be there as a judge. There's such a huge sense of responsibility, I think, that comes with that. And because I was still so sort of close to my competitive career, in terms of years. I'd only been a few years. I think you still have all those memories of what it's like as a dancer preparing for Cowell, and just how much effort and time and energy is invested in that, and how much everybody wants it. What it means to them to be on that board. So that, I think, that brings with it, a real sense of responsibility, and that you're there as a judge, but it's all about them, and your decisions at the end of the day have a huge bearing on what everybody's results are going to be. And it's I think it's a massive privilege to be able to sit in that chair as a judge, and it was a really special day as well. It's all 3 days. I mean, I think the Thursday, I remember it being non-stop rain, or maybe that was the Friday, but there has to be a day that's non-stop rain. But the Saturday, it was a completely different day, and it was glorious. It was really special, I think, being introduced on the stage as a judge, standing with all these sort of people that I looked up to as judges when I was a dancer, and being part of that. And it brought back so many memories from all the years of competing and standing and looking. It's equally nerve-wracking standing looking at that audience as a judge as it is as a dancer, I can tell you. I think, but in my head I suddenly became like 15 again, standing at the top of the swords, thinking, oh, it's like, no, it's okay, you don't have to dance. It's fine. You can just go and sit. But it's a really special place. So it's always going to be, you know, a real honor to be there in any capacity, but particularly as a judge. It's really special.
Flings and Things has become an extremely successful company. I was just wondering, what was the inspiration behind creating it?
It sort of it came about in a sort of funny way. We'd been approached by the Chili Pipers back towards the end of 2012, and started working with them sort of early 2013. Did a couple of gigs in Scotland, almost as a sort of trial, and then towards the the end of the summer, they'd asked us to be involved in more of what they were doing. They took us to the States, and then they asked us to be on all of their Scottish tour dates, and we'd sort of, without anything ever kind of official happening, we sort of became their their sort of official dance provider, which was fantastic. And I'd already been dancing at Gleneagles through through friends that I have in Dundee, and I'd danced at Gleneagles Hotel quite a few times over the years, and did all their Hogmanay shows. But then the agent that works at the Chili's, Douglas, who is fantastic, he became the agent at Gleneagles as well. So it was one of those sort of things just kind of started joining up, quite organically, and with us then dancing at with the Chili's, and Douglas being involved with Gleneagles, he sort of said, oh well, actually that's quite useful, because quite often we get asked to provide Highland dancers for corporate events and various different stage shows and things. So I started to work with Douglas as well, and he came to me at the beginning of 2014 with a pitch. They were looking to put on he said it's not too big an event, but you might need maybe 50 dancers at Gleneagles for one of their corporate clients. He said, I'm busy working on it, so just put this date in your diary and I'll come back to you. And 50 dancers became 100 dancers. And it was the small event he was bringing in people from, I think he brought in the production manager from the Edinburgh Tattoo. He brought in a production company from Edinburgh, and suddenly he was producing this mini version of a tattoo for a corporate client that was to be held in the Gleneagles Resort. And at that time, the only space they had big enough was the equestrian centre. So we were to dance on the sand in the equestrian centre. But at that point, I think when he came to me with that event in the January, and I thought, this needs to now become something official. So once we realised the sort of scale of opportunities that were kind of coming our way, I thought, it's time to to kind of turn this into something real. So part of that as well was if you're working in sort of corporate events or that industry, it's just about making sure that any if we're providing dancers or signing people up, then that we've got the right sort of processes, or the right structure in place to look after people and make sure that dancers are treated in the same way that musicians would be treated, and that we can sort of offer protection and insurance and all that kind of thing, that just sort of comes with the territory if you're working in the events industry. So that was kind of one reason for doing it, but also just because when those opportunities were coming, we thought, well, there's something to be had here. So it started off with a small group of us that we had danced together for a long time. Some of us had competed together, and it was just kind of a group of friends that had been working with the Chili's, and we thought, let's take advantage of this and try and see if we can build on it and make it something that we can grow and get as many people involved as possible, and and create opportunities to sort of showcase Highland dancing in as many different lights as we possibly can. So, and it seemed to go down quite well. People seemed to quite like what we were doing, and it's just grown and grown, and it's been surprising. It's not. I think when we set out to do it, it was sort of something that it'll be fun for us as former dancers to keep going, and I don't think we ever quite dreamed that we'd be able to do the things that we've done. So it's been great.
I remember the 100 dancer tattoo. I think it was my first big event that I'd been a part of.
I think what was so incredible about that, and this is what always amazes me with with Highland dancers, and I think myself really, really lucky that dancers would want to come and dance with us, and I say this all the time. The girls laugh at me because they're like, when she goes, she'll cry again, and because I do it. I find it incredible that so many people would want to come and dance with us, and we're so fortunate that dancers and teachers and parents and have all been really supportive of that, and to have the opportunity to work with that number of dancers from across the country, and but that preparing that, it just blows my mind every time that you can give Highland dancers such a short space of time and such intense instructions, and they just go, okay, and they just work and they learn it. That was, I think, 5 or 6 hours in a rehearsal studio, with like 100 dancers, and people just learned it, and then they arrive on the night and they just do it. And it's Highland dancers are incredible. It speaks volumes of the way that our teachers in the Highland dancing community train people, and the sort of that discipline and the work ethic that's instilled in our dancers. I think that's a great reflection on teachers, and I'm just really grateful that they would allow their dancers to come and join us for events like that, because it allows us to just show Highland dancing in such an incredible way.
So which Fling Things event would you consider as the company's biggest achievement, and why?
Initially, I thought this was quite a tough question, but actually I think it's quite a clear one for me, and I would say it's the Basel tattoo. I think I'm really proud of all of everything that we've been able to do, and I'm really grateful for all the opportunities that we've had. And there have been loads of really special ones, but I think the Basel tattoo is I think that's particularly special for us, because you're sort of following on this legacy of incredible teachers and dance directors that have taken teams to perform there, and those events, I think they're really unique, and they showcase Scottish culture and all cultures really, in such an incredible way, and to such massive audiences. So I think to be given the opportunity to be part of something like that with that sort of reach, that's something that I'm really grateful and really proud of. It's there are so many teachers, or so many choreographers and people involved in Highland dancing all over the world that are doing amazing things, so to have the opportunity to put our work alongside them, that's something that I'm really proud of, and really grateful to have the opportunity to do. And I think the other thing that makes the tattoo type events quite special is that there's usually a few different opportunities to showcase the dancing throughout the event. So if you take Murrayfield, for example, that we did in March, that's phenomenal. And to be able to put that number of dancers, we had 120 that day, and to put that number of Highland dancers on that platform with a crowd of 66,000 people and however many million watching on the TV, that's a massive honor, and that's a tremendous opportunity. But it's one shot, and it's very much directed by what the event company want, so they come and say, it's this music, and we want it this type of routine, and we want you all to wear just colored t-shirts. And you think, right, okay, and it's a fantastic opportunity, but it's very sort of, it has to be within keeping with exactly what they want, and you've got that one sort of 4-minute slot within that. Whereas in a tattoo setting, there'll usually be a few different dances throughout the show, so you have the chance to show Highland in its sort of more traditional form, and then take it all the way through to wherever you want to go with the choreography, really. So I think that makes it such a great opportunity, and such a great platform for showcasing and promoting all the different aspects of Highland dancing. So it's a fairly daunting prospect. It's nerve-wracking, putting your work out there and following on, in that list of people who have done these things before. So it's certainly a big undertaking, but it's one I'm really excited about.
Is there anything that you wish you could tell your younger self if you could go back in time?
Oh, so many things. First of all, it'll be, once you get to your mid-20s, stop eating pasta every day. It just makes the gym that much harder. But no, I think I would definitely tell myself to relax, in big, giant capital letters. I would say relax, and just be don't be quite so hard on yourself, and just, yeah, relax those expectations a little bit. I think I was always, and I mean, I'd probably tell myself that now, to be honest. I think it's, all the sort of the nerves and the anxiety and the pressure, I felt, I create that, you create that yourself. But I always remember there was something, and I can't remember, maybe I might have seen it in a film or something, or if somebody said it to me, but I always remember this phrase of, nobody remembers second, somehow getting stuck in my head when I was younger. And I want to go back and tell my younger self that that's absolute nonsense. Like, wherever you heard that, forget it. Because that became a bit of a fixation for me. And I think it was all about, as much as I loved all of what we did in classes and, all of my, sort of Highland life, that need to win, and that only winning was going to be good enough, that became too big a factor in my kind of competitive life, I think. And I would just tell myself to forget that, because actually the people in your life that really love you and care about you, your friends and your family and the people around you, they don't care whether you come away with 4 firsts or if you fall over in all 4 dances. They don't care. They will love you regardless, and they will be there regardless, and the sun will come up the next day regardless. So, I think if making an impact and being remembered and recognized is really important, well, the way to do that is it's by being kind and being supportive and being encouraging and thoughtful, and looking for positive ways to make an impact and to help other people along. Whether that's as a dancer or as a friend or a teacher, a parent, a human being, and you can still have massive big dreams and huge goals, and still aim for the stars, work hard, dream as big as you like, and really really aim for it, and be passionate and be driven, and be the best that you can be. But know that whatever result happens, if you've done that and you've been the best you can be, then that's more than good enough. And you can still do all of that and be, and be kind and be generous, and that's what will will matter more at the end of every day. It's trophies and medals and things are great, but they don't define who you are as a person, and that's not the measurement of who you are. So relax and open your eyes and enjoy it, and just remember that Highland dancing just always looks better with a smile.
Is there any dancer in particular that you would like to see? Sorry, is there any can't speak today?
I know, because I've talked so long that your brain has actually just decided it's given up.
Sorry. So, is there any dancer in particular that you would like to see interviewed?
Yeah, I think my answers were dancers that were dancers when I was young. So I'm going to stick with my fangirl answer and say I'd love to hear from Jacqueline Smith. I would very much like to hear from Tony Cargill. Because Tony was winning from when I was tiny, and he was tiny as well. And so I would like to hear from Jacqueline. I'd love to hear from Tony. And another person that I would really love to hear from, although I don't know if she does interviews, is Cheryl Roach. Because I find her really inspiring, what she's done with, the sort of promotion of Highland dancing, and, I think with Cheryl as well, the way she encourages the sort of younger generations, along with her learning from her last summer in Basel was fantastic. And I think she has some really interesting stories. I would love to hear from her as well. So there we go. There's 3. I told you, terrible at this. I can't, you ask me for one thing and I give you like 4 every time.
I just want to thank you so much for agreeing to come on and give me like an hour of your time. So thank you so much.
Sorry, I know I just talk so much, and it's even worse in lockdown, because I don't get to talk to as many people now. So it's even worse when somebody does ask me to talk.